So this question is checking that. How can we restrict the domain in two different ways so that the inverse is a function? And we talked about if we only had half of it, it would pass that horizontal line test. So one way that we could restrict the domain is if I took that half. And if I took the yellow half, I would, which x values am I taking? I'm taking all of my x values when they're less than or equal to 1 in this example. Can you see that the yellow graph is all of the x values that are less than or equal to 1? That would be one way to restrict our domain. We could also take the other half. If we took the other half, then we would be looking at x bigger than 1. And it wouldn't matter if you put the bigger than or equals or bigger than, but since I'm splitting it up in half and I kept 1 with 1, I decided not to keep 1 with the other one. And that is a second way you could restrict it. And both the yellow and the green pass the horizontal line test. So now we have to figure out, when we switch things around, which equation goes with which. Because when we do find our equation of our inverse, using our steps, switch the x and y. So I would write x equals y minus 1 squared plus 3. How do I get y by itself? Well, first I'm going to get the squared thing by itself, which will allow me to square root both sides. That's where I have my plus or minus. And finally, add 1 to both sides. So I have two equations. I have one equation where it's the positive x minus 3 plus 1, and one equation where there's a minus in front. So we have to figure out which one goes with which. If we go back to our graph and use the strategy of switching x and y to actually draw the graphs, okay? What's going to happen to this point 1, 3? It's going to go to 3, 1. What about this point 2, 4? 4, 2. And 0, 4? 4, 0. I'm going to put a little black circle around this point, just so that you remember that that one goes with that one. Now, when I draw the inverse image, that black circle, is that on the positive one or the one that's been flipped down? So it's on the positive one. That black circle corresponded to the green one originally. So our green one, that equation is going to be the one with the positive x minus 3 plus 1. And our yellow one, that inverse equation is going to be the one with the negative in front. So one way to figure out which one is which is to think about a single point on there and see what happens to it. Another way to figure out which one goes with which is with the domain restriction. I'm going to draw a line here just to separate those two. With the domain restriction, in the yellow one, the x values were less than or equal to 1. That means when we do our inverse and we switch x and y, this means in our inverse, our y values has to be less than or equal to 1. Look at our blue graph. Where are our y values less than or equal to 1? with the parabola that, with the square root that goes down. For the green one, our x values were when it was bigger than 1. If we switch x and y, whoops, almost, there we go. That means our y values are bigger than 1. Which part of the graph does that match up with? The square root that goes up, the positive one. So that's a second way that you can see which part matches with which. So we've done the graph to illustrate it. Questions you can do for this one are 10 and 12. And we'll finish our example 4, and then we'll have time to work on this and the review at the end of class. Yes. Yes. Just down to there? No problem.